Peace and welcome to another episode of Artistry, where art meets industry. We are your hosts, Rachelle Etienne-Robinson and Stan Substantial Robinson. Season 3 of Artistry is powered by Words, Beats, and Life. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Artistry, where art meets industry. I am Rachelle Etienne-Robinson, and to my right is Stan Substantial Robinson.
Yes, indeed.
For those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you that are returning, welcome back. We are back with season 3.
It's crazy. And it's super dope because season 3 is sponsored by our good friends Words, Beats, and Life. Shout out to them. Clap it up for Words, Beats, and Life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's very exciting. So who we got?
So
for
today,
our first show?
our special guest is none other than artist and educator from the DMV,
Yes, indeed.
Mr. Andrew Katz. Andrew, welcome. Andy.
What's going on, good sir?
Welcome.
All coming together, as you would say.
Yes.
See you.
Yes, we
I-
absolutely, we making it.
Yeah, I'm so glad it's actually coming to fruition. And congratulations
man.
on your 3rd season.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here with us, man. And shout out to you for a lot of different reasons, but besides being a dope artist, it was cool to find out that you were actually a fan of the show too. Yeah. So that was super cool. You know what I mean? So it's
I'm doing my homework.
Yeah, man.
I didn't realize I was doing homework at the time. I was listening to all these episodes and finding all kind of inspiration, whether it was during the pandemic or I was taking the dog for a walk and listening to people talk about how they're composing music for video games and a lot of musicians. And what was really kind of cool is hearing how a lot of your guests are really good friends of yours. And I was thinking that this is a little bit novel because while I feel like I'm a friend of yours, we're sort of at the beginning of our connection.
Yeah.
A lot of the people you've interviewed, you've had this sort of lifelong connection with, whether it's from high school or before. But I think that's what's so cool about your show, and is that you're giving rise to people who are creative in all different ways, but celebrating connection, which is what I absolutely love about how I know Stan. Really, like we got connected in a really organic and special way, and I don't know if that'll come up in our talk, but
I got that question for later. You know what I mean? But. But please.
No, but thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We have so much to cover, and we have so much to share with our audience. You guys are in for a treat. We're going to show you some examples of his work. But first and foremost, before we get started and do a deep dive, how are you and the family, and how has it been these last 2 years during the pandemic?
Oof, man. Well, it has been hard. It has been a real challenge as a parent and as an educator. I wouldn't say it's been as hard as an artist. I feel like the art part has been a catharsis and an opportunity to all of a sudden have time to work on things that I might not have had before. There was no excuse when you're sort of locked in the studio and you're not supposed to be anywhere else. But once we were back at school and once my kids were back at school, it was really challenging, the whole navigating hybrid education. And I was going in every day, but the students were coming in every other day, and the masks and virtual learning, while also teaching the students that were in front of you physically was overwhelming and just really it was too much. We learned a lot, but we learned a lot about what not to do too. So I think it was really hard psychologically for everyone. And speaking just for myself, it was hard for me psychologically, and just to try to be up all the time and try to maintain enthusiasm and practicing self-care while also offering care of young people is a lot. You just found yourself spreading yourself thinner and thinner and thinner. And it hasn't really gone away. This year is different, but it's also hard.
Yeah.
And probably because of some of the deficits that were left behind, I think it's just a lot. I mean, I could go on and on. That would probably be not a very inspiring.
No, but I think it's an important question, because I think, being a parent and an educator, so it's like you get a 1-2 punch. So you're, as an educator, and also being an educator teaching art, right? Where for a lot of people it's considered an elective, right? So it's not as important as for, some people might consider it not as important as English or math or science. So then you're dealing with that whole piece. And then it's like, as far as materials, right? Paints, some kids do not have those art supplies at home. So I can only imagine what that struggle must have been like, last year and going into this year. So I'm happy that,
Yeah. One of my, I guess, ideas that sort of worked was when we were really in lockdown and we had to do the virtual thing. I got like 200 pizza boxes and I filled them with art supplies. And I chose pizza boxes because I wanted to also put different size paper in there. So I gave them a minimum amount of supplies, but I sent home. And I think a lot of school systems and schools answered the call this way. The pizza box for me was kind of cool because they could draw on the box itself and they could take it apart and we could construct it. But it also afforded me the opportunity to put in larger sections of paper. And then I could just throw pens and markers and other things in there too. But
that's creative.
It was tough. It was tough, but it worked, And I was glad to just never see it again. It was fine if they just absorbed it into their household. That's fine.
Yeah. No, that's great. You currently reside, as we mentioned before, in the DMV, in Maryland specifically. Are you from Maryland originally?
Born, raised, lived my whole life in Maryland.
Really?
I was born in Baltimore. I lived first 20 years or so of my life in Ellicott City, and my wife and I moved out to the Eastern Shore in 2000, the year we got married. So everything kind of happened in 2000 for us, and we've lived on the Eastern Shore, but I still work in Annapolis, so I'm across the Bay Bridge twice every day. And I love Maryland. I'm a big fan of Maryland. Some people are like, "Is that a gun on your head?"
Right.
It's Maryland.
Right.
And I know I'm a little biased because I've traveled elsewhere, but I've never lived anywhere else. It's always.
I mean, for those of you watching or listening, if you haven't been to the Eastern Shore, it's definitely, or the state of Maryland, period. It's, there's so many parks and recreation and beaches to definitely take advantage of. So,
Yeah, I'm a Maryland guy too, so I'm super biased, right? Like, man, I'm only living in Virginia right now because my wife is from Virginia. You know what I'm saying? Other than that, we'd probably be neighbors,
Well, some people would consider us neighbors anyway.
I'm talking about like in the same state neighbors, but I feel you.
It's funny. My wife and I have a joke. We've been on vacation before, and not close to home, and people will say, "Where are you from?" And he has said, "Well, we're from near DC." That's her answer. And I'm like, we're from Maryland.
Yeah.
He's like, but not everybody knows where that is. And I hope that's not true.
Right.
But I'm like, we have to be proud and say we're from
Yeah.
So
they will never know if we don't tell them.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny. I feel like people didn't really, because what used to happen is a lot of PG folks, not everybody, but some PG folks would just say DC. Right. And prior to The Wire becoming a really, really popular show, even some Baltimore folks, I know some Baltimore folks now who will say at some point in time would say DC before they would say Maryland, just because everyone they came in contact with knew what DC was. So, but, and now when you say Maryland, I remember being in France specifically. I was in Lyon, France. And I said I was from Maryland, and they were like, Baltimore, like The Wire? And I'm like, yo, everyone calm down. You know what I'm saying? I got family in Baltimore, but I'm from a place called PG County.
Right.
So, yeah, man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So speaking about, being from Maryland, what would you say was your first introduction to the arts?
I would have to say it has everything to do with my parents, my father. My father was a doctor, and he passed away when I was 11. But before he passed away, I mean, it's almost 40 years ago. Can you believe that? Next year it'll be 40 years. I can't even believe it. But even in those first 11 years, there was a lot of formative things happening for me. They talked about college with me when I was a little kid. They talked about art. My dad, although he was a physician and he was a pediatrician, he made time for art. And as he grew up, he was an only child, and I guess a bit of a nerd in hindsight. He was mama's boy. Like his mother was the center of his world, and he grew up in Brooklyn, New York. It sounds really cool and everything, but he was this very sheltered only child. He was the center of their universe, and he grew up. His hobby was collecting stamps. And this is the long way of answering your question. He, from the time he was a kid till the time he was an adult, he would collect the stamps, but then he would mount them in the middle of a binder. And this was in the 1950s at first. And then he would do this elaborate, beautiful illustration around the stamp based on the theme of the stamp. And though I have this collection, and I'm 50 years old now, and I have this collection from the 1950s of my dad's when he was a kid that he passed down to us, and it's remarkable. It's stunning, but there's no question that it has such a big impact on my visuals, the way that I can connect to something or an object or a story or a thing, because he did. He took something as simple as a postage stamp and he made a whole little world about it. And I almost kind of want to donate it at some point to the Smithsonian, because the stamps themselves are not worth very much because nobody collects stamps anymore, but even they're not that rare. But what he did with it is remarkable. And it had a profound effect on me growing up, because when I was a kid, one of the times that I would have with him, when he would be on call as a doctor, we would sit down and we would draw together. And I distinctly remember those times. And after he passed, the thing that really, I think, got me through and had a profound trajectory, a change on my life, was the people in middle school who said, hey, you can draw, like you have talent and you have something special here. And when I look back on it now, as an adult and as a middle school teacher, I think I was okay. I wasn't lighting the world on fire, but you can see that people helped me, and they said, this is something that you can do. And it made me feel special, and special enough that I started to invest in myself with my time and my energies, and eventually went to art school, which was, in hindsight, a really huge leap for me, because I was kind of just floundering a little bit after high school, and it just took some friends to say, you should probably apply to an art school. And I did, and I got in, and it was incredible. And then I just kept kind of letting fate take over. So
that's awesome.
That's great.
It's all one. And I know you have similar stories. Didn't you both go to art school?
Yeah.
We did. Yeah. Well, you want to
go ahead?
Yeah. So, mine was my whole situation was really crazy because, and we've talked about it on the show. So the condensed version is, I didn't even know art school was a thing, and this is when I'm still in middle school, and I just happened to crash the night at a friend's house who was applying to get into Suitland High School in Prince George's County, which had a visual and performing arts program. And so I'd never heard of that school because no one in the community that I lived in was talking about that school like that. And so I just happened to be with him when he was auditioning, learned about the program. I was in the waiting area sketching. They realized, I had talent. So they talked to my boy's mom, who then called my mom and got permission to have me audition on the spot. So I had no portfolio or anything. I just did a couple drawings and answered some questions.
That's cool.
And yeah, man. And so it's crazy. So like, and then if I don't end up there, I don't end up in art college, Pratt Institute. Shout out to Pratt, where I met this woman. So like
Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn. Yep. Look, full circle. You know what I mean? Coming back. So yeah, it's crazy. So how did you find out about Pratt though?
It's funny. I found out about Pratt through my uncle, because my uncle actually went to Pratt. Before, was known for being an art and design school, was an engineering school.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went to school for engineering back in the 70s. And even then, I was, because I was interested in fashion and illustration. And so I was thinking of FIT. Didn't get into FIT,
Right.
but I went to portfolio review back in DC at Corcoran.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And did a portfolio review. Pratt was there. They saw my portfolio, and I got a letter in the mail.
Yeah.
That's-
That's fun. I met Pratt at your school
At
actually.
Micah.
Yeah, Micah.
Micah,
That's they were looking at my portfolio there and stuff. So when I saw that, I was like, yeah, Micah was on the list of places I was looking at as well. But I knew I wanted to leave. I was like, I'm out, son.
And where's Micah? Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a Maryland boy through and through, man.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
That's
So I mean, it's kind of. I remember hearing your story from one of your episodes. Now, when you started talking about Suitland, and I there's other podcasts that I love that are in your genre. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Do. He has Future podcast. It's Future without an E at the end, and he's got an incredible podcast. And his story, I think he went to Design Center out in LA. Similar kind of almost fell into it. Didn't know there was such as an art school, and ended up making. He's interviewing creatives for a living, and he's kind of this guru. And there's another one out in the UK that I listened to, and I quite enjoy. It's called Creative Rebels, and I love them. They're self-deprecating. They're really humble guys. But they've done really well for themselves. And it's just fun listening to their accents all day.
Right.
I bet they say the same thing about us.
Right. For sure.
Well, you know what? I bet they do. I was telling my wife, both of you, and I think I said this to Stan, you have the most beautiful podcast voices. You're perfect for this,
Appreciate that.
Absolutely, because it's true. The way that show comes in, I love it. I love how
We'll go clap it up for ourselves real quick. You know what I mean? Really appreciate it. Thank you for giving us our roses. We will take those.
Definitely. Don't worry, Andy. We're gonna have you come back. We'll have you come back.
Yeah, for sure, man. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to, lay it on too thick. We got you, Andy. But so let me. So I know earlier we talked a bit about some of the biggest challenges you had as an educator, specifically through the pandemic. But what are some of your biggest challenges, and what also do you enjoy most about the arts, about being a visual artist?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest challenges is something I think Rachelle has brought up recently or in previous episodes, about how your podcast is not just about art, but about the industry part and the business of it. And I don't know how it was for you when you were in school. And I loved my experience at Micah, but one thing that they did not do at the time was prepare us to be business people at all.
Yep. Right.
In fact, I would even say they viewed it almost like you were a sellout if you were to make any amount of money. I remember when I told somebody I was going into art ed, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the easy way." And I was like, I got to pay back my student loans, right? I have to get a job, and I wanted to be an educator too, so it worked. But it was interesting to me that the quote fine artists had a problem with people that wanted to educate other fine artists. It didn't really up. But I've always been a bit of a practical person, and I needed to have a return on investment. If I'm going to go to an art school, I have to be gainfully employed when I leave that school. Now, the one thing I wish I wish they did a better job of sort of providing all of the different opportunities that you would have when you get out of an arts, sort of
Right.
really see that there's an array of ways to make a living as an artist. And that's why I love what you're all doing and these other podcasts, is that you're celebrating the different ways that creatives can be not only happy with what they're doing, but successful with what they're doing, and make a living at it. And that I wish was taught. I subsequently, after I graduated, many years after I graduated, they started what they called was an entrepreneur program at MICA. And it was, just one class at a time. And I don't even know there was an extra degree attached to it. It was just really the business of being an artist and trying to understand how to write a contract and what to charge, because those are the questions everybody has.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
How much should I charge? And then we all have, I don't know if they're horror stories, but stories of, hey, I did what you asked me to do. And they're like, well, that's not what I agreed to, or I'm not. I had no idea it would cost that much money, and I'm just going in the wrong direction, or going into things blind and not properly writing out a contract or coming to an agreement before you start the work or getting a down payment. All of the minutia that's really important. If someone had just taught a 101 course, a business course on that, it would have been so valuable and important. So that's a huge challenge.
Which is a perfect segue, because our next question.
Yeah, it's funny. So I was going to say, let me say one thing first, right? Before I ask the question. One of the things I was going to point out too, whenever I hear people say that, right, when they kind of view people who are basically, looking for steady work as an artist, like kind of like sellouts. Like, it's crazy to me when I hear that, because ultimately, it's a point of view kind of privilege, right? Where like, who can afford, most people are struggling to just go to school in general, but art school is extremely expensive, right?
Yeah.
Like, and who has money to throw away like that to go be educated in a thing, not to pretty much be able to make a living and provide for themselves and those they care about. And for me, I want to say as a kid, like maybe even in elementary school when I first started drawing, because I was surrounded by people who were pretty much, from the bottom and didn't have a lot. People were constantly hustling and trying to find a way, sometimes stuff that wasn't necessarily legal, just to get by. So when I realized I was good at art, the first thing I tried to figure out in like second and third grade was, how can I turn this into money? Right? Because if I don't, I'm definitely going to be doing what some of my peers are doing. And so that was something that was very urgent for me even before I even knew there was a school for it. But yeah, I always find that interesting. But we'll segue real quick, because everything you're talking about ties in with the next question, which is, take us back to your first paid freelance job. What lessons, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but what was your first freelance gig, and like what lessons did you get from that? Like, what would you tell your younger self now that, you know better?
This probably isn't what you mean, but I definitely remember using my art as currency at a young age. And it wasn't that I was turning it into money. I was using my art to talk to the girl that I liked, or you know what I mean? Like, it was and it was always, and this is maybe like the beginning of the music connection too, because I would often, if there was a girl I liked, I would find out what music she liked, and I'd familiarize myself with it, and then I would maybe draw a picture of her favorite musician. So it's a little embarrassing. It's actually really embarrassing. But it's funny how the social media part, it boomerangs back, because a girlfriend of mine from 40 years ago recently, she posted a picture I drew for her in seventh grade. And it's pretty funny because it's not all that great, but I remember what I was thinking and why I was doing it, and it worked, right? Like, I'm still connected to that person in a way, and it's really nice. But I think in a more serious way, I kind of relied on people stepping up and offering me money for things. I wish I hadn't waited. I wish I had sort of formulated more of a plan. But what would ultimately happen was people would offer me money that was maybe it wasn't enough, and I would either take it, jump at the chance, and then I would feel bad about the deal. I would give them my work and wish I hadn't, and I would have this money. And then occasionally I would sell something and feel good about it and realize, okay, there's an actual equation here that makes sense, where the customer's happy and the artist is happy, and you're happy that you no longer have the work because they do, and that's the right price. So when people say, well, what do you charge? It really depends. It depends on the work. It depends on the medium. It depends on the situation. And now I feel like I'm in a position, because I have a job as an art teacher, that I don't have to say yes to everything. I also don't have to give things away, and I also don't have to charge too little. I can say no. I can say, you know, I'm not interested in doing that work. And that's tough. It's tough to say no, because you're like, well, what if no one ever asks again? What if I don't do another next gig or next project? But that's been the interesting thing about social media, is that I've used social media for all of the awful things you could say about social media. It is absolutely the spark for so much artistic connection, where I've met so many people I would never have met before, because they've seen my artwork, they followed up with me, or they offered me money, or they just bought it because I had a link where they could buy it. So the freelance part, I think, was a real slow burn, and there was some good high highs and some really low lows with things being either given away. And I was in a bad habit with that. I would just be like, oh, I just want you to have it. And then not realizing that you're sort of doing yourself a tremendous disservice by doing that. Because the next time someone wants something, they're gonna say, oh, well, you just gave it to so-and-so.
Right.
That's true, I did. How can you charge me if I'm your friend? And it's tough. Yeah. But it did start, most of it starts with friends for me. Like the whole getting paid to do things, having people who believe in you and who really do honor your time. I've had some very close friends who stepped up and said, I want this piece. I know it's going to cost a certain amount. Let's iron out all the details and go forward. And that's a gift, that someone understands that it's truly what's the word I'm looking for? A transaction, a business transaction. Even though you're friends and even though you love each other, maybe because you love each other, they understand that this is going to cost a certain amount of money. And if they don't, if they don't want to pay it, we probably shouldn't have this conversation.
Right.
No, that's real.
No love lost. Well, we are going to take a quick break.
Yeah, but before we go, real quick, we're going to show the people a sample of your work.
Right,
so
we've
they
been teasing them enough.
Yeah, we've been talking about it so much. So let's show them one of your pieces real quick. And for those of you listening to the podcast, make sure you come and check it out. Check out ARTdustry on YouTube so you can actually see Andy's work, or visit his website, which is katzarts at katzarts.com. Pardon me.
That's KATZARTS.com.
Yes. So let's go ahead and show them. This is probably our favorite piece.
Yeah.
Yes, Lord. Good Lord. Look at that awesomeness. Yeah.
And for those of you that are listening and not watching with us, what we're looking at is a watercolor, right, Andy? This is also watercolor?
This one, believe it or not, this is a digital painting on an iPad.
Got you. So we're looking at a digital painting of the
Yasin Bey.
Yes, formerly known as Mos Def.
Mighty Mos.
And it's so realistic. I mean, it looks like it came straight out of a magazine. It's beautiful. The colors are vibrant. You have teal in the background. You have, what is that? Fuchsia? Reds? You got reds. You have pinks in there, but
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You know, and then then on the back, the black background, got the whole red, black, and green thing happening too. It's pretty dope, man. It's great
Thanks.
work.
I always have to like this one's obviously taken from a photograph. I definitely drew it. I definitely painted it. It's digital, but I spent hours and hours and hours trying to make sure everything's right. But I have to give it up to people who take these photographs because I'm really at their mercy. It's not like I went to this show and I sat there and got this. There are some artists who do that, who paint like right there on scene. But I'm really looking for photographs that move me, that I want to try to paint or draw, and this is one of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, salute to you for doing an amazing job, and salute to the photographer as well, and of course, salute to the Mighty Most, now known as Yassine Bey. Their new project dropped recently, by the way, too. It's definitely dope. Yeah. But yeah, man. So we're gonna take a quick commercial break and show some love to our sponsor, Words, Beats, and Life. Andy, don't go anywhere, and everybody watching or listening right now, stick around. We'll be right back. All right.
My name is Jakia Hall, and I am the Academy Manager and the Fashion Design Teacher. I've always been creative on my own, but being able to actually express it through a medium and being able to showcase to others the type of creativity I had probably helped me in the best way in terms of confidence. I've always been passionate about keeping the youth in the arts. It wasn't really an outlet when I was younger. Being able to showcase that to younger students who at a time may not have someone that is telling them that being an artist is a real career, and also being a Black woman, of course. Being able to be that figure for them and let them know that if I can do it, you can do it, if not better. That's why I'm at Words, Beats, and Life. Enroll in my fashion design class today at wblinc.org/academy.
All right, and we're back.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so those of you that are just joining us, you just saw a piece from Andy of Mos Def. We have some more artwork that we want to show. As we go through the different art pieces, let's talk shop. You've created some phenomenal lifelike, like the one right here with Redman, for instance. Walk us through your process. And then the other question is, this is a two-part question. The other question is, why watercolor specifically?
And I believe one is watercolor and the other one's digital illustration, right? Like the one with Questlove is watercolor, and then the Redman piece is digital illustration.
You got it. And so, Rachelle, the process question is really dependent on which piece we're talking about. The iPad digital work is something I wanted to learn because my students were getting really interested in trying to do that. So I kind of learned how to do it basically using an app called Procreate, and it's such a kind of a funny name for the app, but Procreate was a $5 app when I bought it, and it's probably the best $5 I ever spent. And you can color match exactly. You have a full complement of tools. They're all digital though, and I still can't quite get my mind around the idea that there's really no original. There's no one original. You can output, and I've printed them. I've gone to a service bureau and I print them, and they look stunning on paper. They look exactly the same. They're just not backlit, but they are vibrant in a way that my watercolors might not be. In fact, my watercolor palette is a little subdued, and that part of that might be because I am a messy artist. I think I'm a little dirty when it comes to, I don't clean my brushes as often as I should, and I don't get fresh water as often as I should. And even though I'm a little like tight, I try to be really tight with the watercolor. I tend to be a little lazy when it comes to getting up and getting new water and cleaning off my brushes. So my colors are they're the way I want them, but they aren't like super vivid, like the ones, the Red Man and the Most Def. So what you're looking at now, that the Public Enemy piece, that's a watercolor that I have hanging in my house, one of my favorites ever. And I'm actually really happy with the wristband, because it is, not only is it a little more vivid with the red, black, and green, you know what I mean, but it also there's a technique in there where you drop salt, just table salt, into the wet pigment, and you
texture.
this really nice texture. And it worked for things like LL Cool J's Kangol and Chuck D's wristband. It's perfect for certain things. And I could talk about technique all day with watercolor. I was invited to an Annapolis watercolor thing where I was the guest artist, and they want you to paint in front of everybody. And I warned them. I said I think you're going to be bored, because I go really slow, and it was all of these older people. I shouldn't say old, but older than me people. And I was painting, and sure enough, I look up and an hour and a half has gone by, and I've done about this much of my painting. And they're like, well, we wanted somebody like loose and fluid. Like, that's just not me. But that's exactly why I think I ended up being successful with watercolor, because for 20 years of my life, I had stayed away from watercolor completely because I failed at it. I was terrible. I hated watercolor because I thought it needed to be loose and free and flowy. And some of my favorite artists had done it that way, and I did not do it that way. So what I do now, as far as process goes, if I'm doing a watercolor, I will draw for hours just with the hardest pencil I can find, 4H or more. And I will just do the most rock solid line drawing I can, with every value and every shadow drawn out as a shape. And then I color it in, basically. And I love the painting part, because it's almost like I've pre-planned everything. So and there's as you can see, sort of the salt effect on the left side of his Kangol. And so that's been, I've just fell in love with watercolor. And then I would say for maybe 10 or 12, 15 years, that's all I did. I get really kind of obsessive, where I'm like, well, this works, I'm going to do that. And then just as I say that, like the Nas picture comes up on cardboard, and I started to break away from watercolor a little bit. I mean, I'm always going to go back to it because I love it, but I wanted to practice what I preach with my students. Take chances, take creative risks. Don't just do what's comfortable. Really try new things. So I remember being in college, and then some of the painting majors would forge these relationships with the box stores like Best Buy and Circuit City, and they would, anytime they would sell a refrigerator or a dryer, they would have this giant cardboard box, and they would throw it away. So the art students would say, hey, why don't you just give us that? Instead of us buying canvases, we'll just draw on cardboard or paint, even with oil paint on cardboard. And we started doing that with our students when we were teaching some high school students how to paint, because it's a cheap alternative. Nobody's too precious about it because it's dirt cheap. It's something you can usually find. So they're not going to worry, like, I spent 8 hours stretching this canvas. They just found a cardboard box. They can tear it up, they can cut it up, and they have a whole semester's worth of surface to paint on. And so I started doing it with this Nas piece. I did a whole series of these too. I called it the Corrugated Cardboard Collection. And I would bring them to live shows, like the Iced Tea is one of those. And it's maybe a little bigger than it looks. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 22 by 30. It's a nice size sheet of cardboard. And obviously when you press harder on it, you get more of the corrugation shining through. And that I love. And I don't know if you have a piece that shows this. I forget which pieces you have, but I eventually started cutting into the surface and pulling away the top layer, exposing some of the lines of corrugation physically. So they weren't just looking like a rubbing, they were actually part of there's one of Black Thought where I did that.
Yeah, we saw that one.
Where I cut into it and I pull away the top layer. And some of the pieces, as you may have seen with the LL Cool J and things like that, they're signed, and that's sort of how this kind of took off for me. This whole idea of bringing actual art to live shows, and so everything kind of started coming together when I started to not only draw the people that I admired and the music I was listening to, but I always consider myself pretty introverted, and I didn't take a lot of chances, and I didn't go out on a limb very often. And when I started realizing, like, hey, I just drew Rakim, and this drawing turned out really well, and he's going to be down in DC playing at the Howard Theater. What's stopping me from going down there to that show? And so I surprised myself by starting to go down to see live music and bringing artwork with me, and kind of inviting myself backstage to show the talent what I was working on. And I guess I would have been shut down, and it wouldn't have gone anywhere if everyone I showed the work to wasn't so great about it. They were all like welcoming, and they weren't in a rush for me to leave. Part of it was, I think I was pretty patient and polite about getting backstage. I wasn't pushing and shoving. I was waiting my turn. But once I did that, I was like, this is a thing. Like, this is something I want to spend some time with. And so I would hear about a show, give myself a month or a couple weeks lead in, and go, oh, okay, I don't know, Arrested Development's coming to the Howard. I'll do drawing a speech. Okay. Cool Keith is going to play at U Street Music Hall. I'll have a drawing done when he gets there. And that's and social media was this extra thing where I would let them know I was coming to their show. I would advertise their show by writing about it, by listing the venue, all on Twitter. And then sometimes I would play around with their lyrics. I would throw out a couple lyrics, favorite things. And then I would post my picture. And I said, hey, I hope to show you my drawing on Friday when you're in DC. And not every time, but enough times they would be like, can't wait. Like, I'll see you there. And I was like, whoa.
That's awesome.
And then the best one, and this might be a good segue for you and I, Stan, one of the catalysts for all of this was I'm always been a Public Enemy fan. And I did this drawing of Chuck. It was always a dream of mine to meet Chuck D. Like, I always wanted to not just, say, hey, what's up, but like shake his hand. I wanted to have a conversation with him. And I did a drawing, and they were coming through the 930 Club in DC. I couldn't believe I was going to be able to go to the 930 Club and see Public Enemy. I thought, this is incredible. Right. So I started doing my little Twitter thing. I was pretty new to Twitter too. I think it was 2012. I was late to the game, but it was new for me. And I said, hey, like Chuck, Mr. Chuck D, at Mr. Chuck D, 930 Club on November, whatever. And then here's my drawing that I did. And I would throw out all my favorite lyrics. And then one night my phone vibrated, and it was a direct message tweet, and it said, hey bro, DM me. And I was like, what does DM mean again? Like, I honestly thought it was like a cease and desist, like stop quoting me and stop using my name. And instead I wrote him, I said, hey, what's up? And he's like, I saw what you did. Like, would you be my guest at the show at the 930 Club? And I flipped out. I've written a whole blog about it, and it was incredible because it all came true. I went, I got a chance to meet him. He drew the Public Enemy logo on my drawing, along with his favorite line from Don't Believe the Hype. And I had this opportunity to really connect with Chuck. And a lot of really amazing things have happened since then because of that connection.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. So, which leads me to two different things. So one, I know, so I think it was 2017 when we met in VA at an event where Chuck D was actually speaking. So, I mean, you pretty much just told the story of how you met Chuck, but that also led to you eventually becoming a curator for publicenemy.com. So tell us a little bit about like how you curate the site for them.
Well, and that's kind of come and gone because I guess Public Enemy is sort of no more with Chuck and Flav, like, you know, having their issues.
Sure.
But it was really part of that initial meeting with Chuck. I remember I sat down in the hotel lobby to talk with him because he's like, yeah, we should talk. And we sat down and everybody had already left on the tour bus, and Chuck drives separate in his little, like, the rental car. And he said, hey, like, so you've been doing all this art and you've been quoting us and putting things out on Twitter. He goes, you want to keep doing that for us? And I was like, confused. I said, well, I'll be glad to do that. Yeah. And he's like, well, I can't pay you. And I was like, I wouldn't imagine you would. Like, why? Okay, I'm still gonna do it. It's awesome. I love it. And he's like, well, you know, I'm thinking about some things, and I have this idea for like the website, but also this idea, like, I've traveled the world and I've met people all over the planet who do similar things, who make art that's hip hop related and change the world related. And would you want to be a part of that? So I took on the opportunity to just format pictures and write short articles and short paragraphs and things for publicenemy.com. And I was diligent about it. I would do it as often as I could. I would just, anything that was newsworthy that was going on with the group, or I remember Black History Month, they challenged me to do one really significant post a day for a lot of people that hadn't heard of certain atrocities that had happened. It was very graphic, but it was really important that they used their platform. And I was like, I have to take this very seriously. This is important. They're asking me to do this. So I learned a tremendous amount because I write everything and I wanted to get everything right. And so that year, we did some pretty profound posting on their website. So that was pretty cool. And ultimately, they did pay me for that. I couldn't believe it. I think I wanted to frame my first little check. It was like I was on the Public Enemy payroll. I like, this is I'll take it. You know, this is awesome. Right. But then, if I could segue into the other part, was mADurgency. Was this Chuck is known for coining terms. You know, even just their album titles are all like plays on words, and he's a genius when it comes to just reimagining the English language. But the mADurgency idea is one he got because what a lot of people don't know is Chuck is a visual artist as well. He's a trained drafts person. He went to college for drafting and architectural design, and he still makes art all the time. And
we gotta get him on the show, man.
Yeah, you know, if I can, I'll do my best. I know he retweeted it when I told him I was going to be on yours, so he knows.
That's what's up.
He knows that. Maybe he's out there listening right now. But he's an artist. He loves to give shine to other artists, and it's not a lot of people are like that. But he uses his notoriety to give other people shine and other people a leg up, and he's certainly done that for me. So that's
how we met.
That's right. He connects people, and that was exactly how we met, right? So should we tell that story, or do you want to tell it, or should I tell it?
Yeah, man. Listen, you're the guest. If you want to, you want to throw me the alley-oop. I don't know how you want to do it, but yeah, listen, you're already going, brother. Go ahead.
Well, you started telling the story about how we met at, it was a Martin Luther King weekend at McLean, Virginia. And I was really excited for my friend Malcolm to meet Chuck. So I wanted to go because he was going to be close enough that I could just drive and see him. And my friend Malcolm and my friend Skip went to meet him as well. And we sat right in the front row. You know, we were nerds about it. We just sat there in the front row, like, it'd be great. And he starts talking about music and family, and he of course always wants to give other people a leg up or just the spotlight. And he said something like about he's like, I think Substantial's here, right? Substantial, you're here, right? Why don't you stand up? And I turned around, and you, who I hadn't met yet, stand up, and everybody applauds. And he's like, give him. I think he's like, give him your social media.
Right. Had me shout out my social media. Bro, I wasn't ready. I thought I was ready. I was not ready.
And I'm sitting in the front row. I'm like, that's awesome. That is so cool. What a cool feeling that must be. And then he starts talking again, and he's like, and he goes, and like, Andy Katz is here, right? Hey, AK, why don't you stand up? And I was like, what? And like you said, I wasn't ready. So I stand up, people clap. He's like, give him your social media. And then he talks about social media for a while. But I was floored because I was there to see him. I can't believe that he put the light on us. And then I took that as a little bit of a nod when we were in line later on. I think either I was in front of you or you were in front of me in line. I was like, that was something, right? Like, that was cool.
Yeah, man.
And then you had a CD, and I was immediately taken with the artwork on the cover. I was like, this is beautiful. And I think it's your daughter that's on the cover.
Yeah, our oldest daughter. Yep.
Yeah, and you said, well, that's my daughter, and I said, wow, that's really beautiful. How that, like, the cover art's great. And you're like, yeah, I did that too. I was like, oh man. That was when I don't know if it was then, but later on, you sort of taught me the term multi-hyphenate. When you introduce yourself, I'm like, I'm gonna use that. That's a great title. I love that. So Chuck's a special guy, and
he is.
And I hope he is. I hope he does listen to this. I hope he sees it. But it would be great to have him on your podcast, because this is what he's about, right? Is connection and art and industry, and using a platform to help other creatives. And so mADurgency is that. What we are is we're a full service art agency. So it's a play on words on ad agency, mADurgency, ad agency. And we're all over the world. We have people in the UK, Amy Cinnamon down in Miami. We have a Damien Vandermeer who's in Australia. We have some people in New York and here. So it's kind of cool. We get on phone calls or Zoom calls every once in a while, and we strategize. And we've had a couple of what we call legacy shows. Well, one's in the works, and we pulled one off already. A legacy show is when we pay tribute to a hip hop photographer by having them put their photos up, and we all do paintings and drawings and artwork based on their photography. And so Ernie Panicoli, who's a pretty famous hip hop, I mean, in hip hop circles, he's very famous. He's an icon. He came out. We had a show in November in New York, and it was really amazing. And then from that, we got some other connections. So I get rolling when I talk about Chuck and mADurgency. There's so much that we're up to. We're always planning things, and we're trying to make things happen. And we also try to stretch each other. I know my friend Kyle Moser, who's up in New York, he's connected with Spike Lee for some really cool things. He's done a painting of Jack Johnson and Joe Louis for Spike. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it, but he's got some connection to the Colin Kaepernick documentary that's coming out. So the visual arts part of that is connected to that doc. And I think Chuck is too. I think Chuck's part of that too. So it's all hopefully overlapping.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. What would you, in reference to your work, going back to your work a bit, how would you say your artwork has evolved from your earlier days to how it is now?
I guess I hope that it has evolved. I'm a bit of I pay a tribute to my favorite artists kind of subtly, and then maybe not so subtly lately. Like I'm looking at these birds that I painted probably 15 years ago. There's probably a date on there, but I can't see it because I'm old now. and I have to wear reading glasses. But those are paintings I did a long time ago, and they're my attempt to play with media. So I had some gold leaf and some collage along with traditional watercolor. And so what I evolved that to was when I started doing a lot of portraiture, and I absolutely love doing portraiture, is I started to incorporate collage and different materials into my watercolor. So all of a sudden I was gluing things down and tearing things up and making things look like the golden eagle there, where it looks like the map is kind of going behind the eagle. It's just collaged on there, and I cut it to make it look like it's behind the beak and behind the shoulder, but it's just cut that way. It's just a strip of paper that's on the surface. So I started doing that in some of my hip hop portraiture too. I know there's a couple of, like, there's an Adam Yauch painting where I printed out all of my favorite Adam Yauch lyrics, and then I cut them all up and glued them on in little bits that looks like it's kind of emanating from his chest. Recently I have, and I don't know if you have any examples of these because they're pretty new, but during the pandemic, I was watching some, I guess, bad television, and I saw like a whodunit where there was a murder weapon that was found in a violin case. And when the violin case opened, for some reason, a little voice went off inside my head, and I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you did a painting that fit into a violin case, or a guitar case, or a trumpet case, and then you could just hang the case on the wall as a frame, or you could open it. And I immediately, like the next day, I got all excited about this idea. It was like just a real epiphany. And I started looking on eBay to buy up instrument cases. At least that's what I thought I should search. So I searched instrument cases, and nothing that I was looking for came up. Like no musical instrument cases came up. But instead, these electricians boxes, these vintage old electricians boxes started popping up with all these gauges and knobs and dials. And the lids were usually either empty or there was just a old card in there. So I had the impulse to draw a painting or make a painting that fits right into the lid. And that's what I started doing. And I've attached it to my hip hop work. So the first one I did, I think, was a Rakim box. I did a Rakim portrait that fits into this box. So the lid of the box opens. There's a portrait of a traditional watercolor portrait that fits exactly in the lid. And then I challenged myself to bust the box open and take out the gauges and then digitally remake the gauges and add lyrics so that you could turn the knobs and the lyrics would go by, and or it would. The first one looks like it measures what a good MC he is. So instead of I redid all the numbers, and it says lyrics and it says flow, and so the little gauge kind of like flutters in between, and it looks like it's measuring how good an MC he is, which is,
oh my gosh.
And then
we definitely have to have you back so we can see the update. There's just not enough time in the day. But we've gone through so many of your artworks with the crabs and of course the athletes. I have to say that though the eyes are the ones. I mean, the eyes are the soul, and how you're able to draw people in with that, with your technique and everything is top notch. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness!
Sure.
I love the challenge of doing a portrait. They don't all turn out. I'm working on a KRS-One right now, where it's a colored pencil portrait, but it's in one of these boxes that's from the 1920s, I think. And I remade the gauges, and it reflects lyrics from The Sound of the Police and My Philosophy. So it's like I'm going for my favorite, most poignant lyrics, and I'm seeing how can I incorporate them, either as an illustration or as a concept. And it's you have to be a fan, I think, in some ways. You have to go, what am I looking at here? And then go, whoa, oh my God. Like the day that I did a De La Soul box, and you turn the knob, and it's one of my favorite songs is I Know by De La Soul, and you turn the knob, and it says, greetings, girl. And it's I'm like, hey, I like this. So if I liked it and I made it myself, like, okay, I got to get these out into the world. I've made about, I think, 12 of them now. And I'm pretty happy with how they're.
We're definitely gonna have to, make an appointment.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we definitely we're taking a look at things like we need to figure out what's getting added to our collection, so we can hang it in our home, man.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey. We so appreciate it. We learned a lot.
Yes, indeed.
And got to reminisce as well. So it was a pleasure.
Yeah, and to everyone watching, make sure you follow Andy on social media, like Twitter and also Instagram. It's just AJ Katz with a Z. That's a KATZ art. It's art, not arts, right?
That's right.
Apologies.
No, that's all right. That's cool.
Yeah. Apologies for the typo, but yes,
Google. You could Google him.
Yes, indeed, he's Googleable. Yes, he is. But
can I drop one plug in here at the end?
Yeah, please, by all means.
I'm short on time, but one thing I would love to talk about at some point, and I always like to bring this up because it's new for me. But we in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, we dropped a mini documentary about Run DMC. I don't know if you know about this.
No.
We haven't seen it.
It's called In Search of Run DMC, and it's available on YouTube. You can watch it for free. It's 16 or 17 minutes long, and it's a whole other. It's like kind of my alter ego of me traveling, of using my art and my love of hip hop to travel as part of this larger group called Delta Bravo. And if you watch it, you'll understand that when you visit a place, you can really connect with it through vintage photography and stories that you might know. And then you can kind of go there and discover things. So it's really it's a little bit of it's a travel documentary and a discovery documentary. So In Search of Run DMC. Check that out because I would love.
Okay. What platform?
YouTube.
YouTube.
We'll link it to the end of this video, so that way, anyone's ever watching it, it'll recommend it at the end of it for sure.
Yeah. And the only reason I bring it up is Nick Light, the director, and Frank Angelchik, who was the cameraman, sort of gifted it to me. I went to Hollis, Queens, to go see where Run DMC started. And they followed me all over with a camera. And it was awesome. 6 or 7 hours, and they distilled it down to about 16 minutes. And it's it's hopefully the beginning of a lot more. We're going to try to do more bands and more cities and more travel. And there's a lot more to tell. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Next thing you know, you'll be on CNN.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
Well, again, man, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
We definitely appreciate you and your time and your ability, man. You've always, like from the moment I saw your work, I was thoroughly impressed. And so it's a pleasure to have you on the show, brother. And definitely looking forward to doing some more with you, man, in the future.
I hear you. I'm so glad we're connected. And I'm glad that this finally happened. It's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All
and
right.
again, to everyone watching, man, thanks for tuning in. We're going to get ready to head out. But if you haven't already, you should know by now. But please make sure you like the video. Shout out again to our sponsor, Words, Beats, and Life. And yeah, man, we will see you for our next episode. Who we have as a guest for next week?
Next, in 2 weeks, join us again. We'll have Naturel, also a visual artist, who will be joining us.
Yes,
also from the DMV.
Yes, indeed. Maryland, another Maryland guy. I am not mad at all. I'm very, very happy about how we're starting off season 3. But Andy, we'll catch up soon, man.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Appreciate it.
All right.
Likewise. Peace. All right, folks. So we will see you next time. Thanks for watching Artistry. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Artistry, where art meets industry. Season 3 of Artistry is sponsored by Words, Beats, and Life. Visit www.wblinc.org to learn more. This podcast is produced by Substantial Art and Music. For more information, please visit www.subartandmusic.com. You can also follow us on social media at Sub Art and Music. Peace.